Hello, everyone. Today, I want to talk about something that we all struggle with, no matter how confident we may seem on the outside: taking action first. You see, it's easy to get stuck in the endless cycle of planning, perfecting, and waiting for the right moment. We think that if we can just figure everything out, then we'll be ready to act. But here's the truth: waiting for the perfect plan, the perfect time, or the perfect conditions, only keeps us stuck. And that's not where growth happens. I want to ask you to consider a different approach: take action first. What would happen if we took action, even before we had all the answers? What if we leaned into uncertainty, into the discomfort, and just started? Let's talk about vulnerability for a moment. When we think about taking action, there's often a deep fear of failure, of making a mistake, or looking foolish. But what if we stopped seeing vulnerability as a weakness and started seeing it as a source of strength? Vulnerability is about being willing to show up, even when we don't have it all figured out. It's about saying, "I don't know everything, but I'm still going to give it a try." That's real courage. And then there's imperfection. Perfectionism is the enemy of progress. We wait, and we wait, trying to get everything just right, hoping that when we finally take action, everything will be perfect. But the truth is, progress is far more important than perfection. When we act before we're ready, we allow ourselves to make mistakes, learn from them, and grow. Those little failures, those moments of imperfection, they're the building blocks of success. Now, I won't sugarcoat it: taking action first is uncomfortable. It's risky. But guess what? Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the willingness to move forward despite it. Taking action first means choosing courage over comfort. It means stepping into that discomfort and trusting that the courage to act will lead us somewhere worthwhile. And what happens when we take action, even when we fear failure? We embrace failure as part of the process. Failure is not something that defines us, it's a natural part of the journey. Each failure is a lesson. Each misstep brings us closer to our true path. The real failure is not in the fall, but in not getting back up. So, take that first step, even if it's messy. Because action creates momentum, and momentum creates change. At the end of the day, taking action first is about believing in yourself, even when you can't see the whole path. It's about choosing courage over comfort, embracing imperfection, and trusting that every small step forward, no matter how uncertain, is still progress. So, let's stop waiting for the perfect moment. Let's stop waiting for the fear to go away. Let's take action first, because that's where the real magic happens. Vulnerability as strength is a concept that seems counterintuitive to many of us. For most of our lives, we are taught to avoid vulnerability at all costs. We are conditioned to believe that strength comes from being invulnerable, from having it all together, and from not showing any signs of weakness. Vulnerability, on the other hand, is often seen as something to be feared, something that makes us appear fragile, weak, or incompetent. But what if vulnerability is actually the source of our greatest strength? When we talk about vulnerability, we're not just talking about the emotional experiences of sadness or fear. Vulnerability is about being open, honest, and authentic in the face of uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. It's about being willing to show up as our true selves, without hiding behind the masks we often wear to protect ourselves. It's about allowing ourselves to be seen, even when we're not sure of the outcome. It's about stepping into the unknown, not with certainty or assurance, but with the courage to face whatever comes next. The truth is, we cannot create meaningful connections or experience real growth without vulnerability. At its core, vulnerability is about courage. It takes a great deal of courage to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. It's much easier to put up walls, to hide behind a facade, to pretend we have everything under control. But when we do that, we miss out on the very thing that makes us human: the ability to connect with others, to learn, to grow, and to evolve. Vulnerability creates the space for these experiences. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we also open ourselves up to new possibilities. The fear of vulnerability often comes from a belief that if we expose ourselves, we will be judged, criticized, or rejected. We worry that if we show our true selves, our imperfections, our fears, our weaknesses, we will be seen as less than, as unworthy, or as incapable. But the reality is that vulnerability invites connection. When we allow ourselves to be real, to be imperfect, we invite others to do the same. Vulnerability creates an environment where authenticity can thrive, and in this environment, we can build deep and meaningful relationships with others. Moreover, vulnerability is a powerful tool for growth. We often think of strength as being about resilience, about being able to withstand adversity without breaking. But true strength is not about avoiding pain or discomfort, it's about being able to move through it and come out the other side stronger. And that process of moving through pain, of facing our fears and uncertainties, requires vulnerability. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we open ourselves up to learning from our mistakes, our failures, and our setbacks. We stop trying to be perfect, and instead, we embrace the messy, imperfect process of growth. In this way, vulnerability becomes the key to personal transformation. The notion that vulnerability is a weakness is also rooted in our fear of failure. We live in a society that often equates failure with inadequacy, that rewards success and punishes failure. As a result, we are afraid to take risks, to put ourselves out there, and to fail. But failure is not something to be feared, it's something to be embraced. Failure is an inevitable part of the human experience, and it's through our failures that we learn the most. When we allow ourselves to fail, we are also giving ourselves permission to grow, to evolve, and to try again. Vulnerability enables us to take those risks, knowing that even if we fail, we will learn something valuable along the way. What's more, vulnerability fosters resilience. Resilience isn't about avoiding pain or suffering, it's about having the ability to bounce back after hardship. And this resilience comes not from avoiding vulnerability, but from embracing it. When we allow ourselves to feel pain, to experience disappointment, and to confront our fears, we develop the strength to move forward. Vulnerability is not something that makes us weaker, it makes us stronger, because it allows us to tap into our true emotional strength. It's through vulnerability that we develop the courage to keep going, even when things get tough. Furthermore, vulnerability is essential for creativity and innovation. We often think of creativity as a product of talent or genius, but creativity thrives in an environment where failure is allowed, where mistakes are seen as opportunities for learning, and where risk-taking is encouraged. Vulnerability is at the heart of creativity, because it requires us to take chances, to put our ideas out into the world, and to risk being judged or criticized. Without vulnerability, we remain stuck in the safe zone, afraid to try something new, to explore new ideas, or to take a chance on something that might fail. But when we embrace vulnerability, we open ourselves up to limitless possibilities, because we are no longer bound by fear or self-doubt. We are free to explore, to experiment, and to create. Finally, vulnerability is an act of self-compassion. So often, we are our own harshest critics. We set impossibly high standards for ourselves, and when we don't meet them, we berate ourselves for not being good enough. But vulnerability allows us to let go of perfectionism and to treat ourselves with kindness. When we embrace vulnerability, we give ourselves permission to be human. We allow ourselves to make mistakes, to feel emotions, and to be imperfect. In doing so, we create the space for self-acceptance and self-love. And this is where true strength lies, not in being flawless, but in accepting ourselves as we are, with all of our imperfections. In the end, vulnerability is not a weakness. It's the foundation of strength, courage, growth, creativity, resilience, and connection. It's what allows us to show up in the world as our true selves, without fear of judgment or rejection. It's what enables us to take risks, to fail, and to rise again. And it's what allows us to build deeper, more authentic relationships with others. Vulnerability is not something to be feared, it's something to be embraced. Because when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we unlock our true power. The concept of imperfection is something we often struggle with. In a world that constantly promotes perfection, the idea that imperfection has power can be hard to accept. We live in a society that tends to celebrate success, achievement, and flawlessness. Social media bombards us with images of idealized lives, perfectly curated appearances, and flawless accomplishments. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that to be worthy, to be successful, or to be happy, we must somehow attain this unattainable perfection. But what if imperfection isn't something to be ashamed of? What if it's the key to our growth, connection, and even our success? We all know the feeling, the fear of not being enough, the desire to be perfect, to get everything just right before we put ourselves out there. We hold ourselves to impossibly high standards and, in the process, we create a barrier between ourselves and the world around us. Perfection becomes the thing we chase, and in doing so, we miss out on the beauty of the journey, the messiness, and the lessons that come with imperfection. At the heart of imperfection is vulnerability. Perfectionism, at its core, is a defense mechanism, a way to shield ourselves from judgment, criticism, or failure. If we can just get everything right, we think, then we won't have to face rejection or feel inadequate. But this desire for perfection is not just exhausting, it's also limiting. Perfectionism keeps us stuck, trapped in a cycle of overthinking and overworking, never allowing us to take risks or make mistakes. It creates a world where we are so focused on the outcome that we forget to enjoy the process. The reality is that imperfection is what makes us human. We all have flaws, imperfections, and idiosyncrasies that define us. When we embrace these imperfections, we allow ourselves to be fully human. It's in our imperfections that we connect with others, not through the masks of perfection we wear. The more we show up as our authentic selves, with all of our quirks, mistakes, and uncertainties, the more we create a space for others to do the same. Imperfection fosters connection because it invites others into our humanity, allowing them to see that they are not alone in their struggles. Furthermore, imperfection is the birthplace of growth and creativity. If we were all perfect, there would be no room for innovation, for trial and error, for learning and adapting. Imperfection forces us to learn from our mistakes, to experiment, to push boundaries, and to try again. It is through our flaws and shortcomings that we discover new ways of doing things, new approaches to problem solving, and new paths to success. The best inventions, the most groundbreaking ideas, and the most meaningful achievements often come from people who were willing to fail, to stumble, and to grow from those experiences. In the realm of creativity, imperfection is particularly powerful. Creative work, whether it's art, writing, music, or any other form of expression, is rarely perfect. In fact, some of the most beloved and revered works of art are celebrated for their imperfections. The rawness, the emotion, the vulnerability, the flaws in a piece of work often make it resonate deeply with others. The idea of perfection in creativity stifles originality, as it forces us to fit into a predetermined mold, to play by a set of rigid rules. But when we embrace imperfection, we open ourselves up to new possibilities. We free ourselves from the constraints of perfectionism and give ourselves permission to explore, experiment, and make something uniquely our own. Imperfection also teaches us resilience. Life is unpredictable, and it rarely goes according to plan. When things don't go the way we expect, we often feel disappointed, frustrated, or even defeated. But imperfection teaches us how to adapt, to bounce back, and to find new solutions. It reminds us that setbacks are not failures, they are opportunities for growth. In fact, some of the most successful people in the world have faced significant obstacles, failures, and mistakes. What sets them apart is not their ability to avoid imperfection, but their ability to embrace it, learn from it, and move forward with even greater determination. Moreover, imperfection is central to building meaningful relationships. How many times have we hidden our true selves, our fears, and our insecurities, out of fear of judgment or rejection? We are often so focused on presenting a perfect version of ourselves to the world that we forget that true connection comes from being vulnerable, authentic, and imperfect. When we let go of the need to be perfect, we allow others to see us for who we truly are, and in doing so, we create the space for real, deep connections to form. People don't connect with our perfection, they connect with our humanity, with our struggles, our imperfections, and our authentic selves. There's also a certain freedom in imperfection. Perfectionism can feel like a heavy burden, always striving for an unattainable standard, never feeling like we measure up. But when we embrace imperfection, we free ourselves from that pressure. We give ourselves permission to fail, to make mistakes, and to be imperfect. We stop holding ourselves to impossible standards and start living more fully, more authentically. We allow ourselves to take risks, to be spontaneous, and to enjoy the process of living, rather than constantly chasing an idealized version of ourselves. At the heart of embracing imperfection is the understanding that perfection does not lead to happiness or fulfillment. The pursuit of perfection often leads to dissatisfaction, burnout, and self-criticism. When we release the need for perfection, we make space for self-compassion, for growth, and for genuine fulfillment. We stop measuring our worth by how perfectly we perform, and we start measuring it by how fully we show up, how much we learn, and how kind we are to ourselves along the way. Ultimately, the power of imperfection lies in its ability to teach us how to live fully and authentically. It challenges the unrealistic standards that hold us back and encourages us to embrace our flaws as the very things that make us unique and human. Imperfection is not something to fear or avoid, it is something to celebrate. It is in our imperfections that we find our greatest opportunities for growth, creativity, and connection. When we accept imperfection, we give ourselves permission to live more freely, to take risks, to learn from our mistakes, and to build relationships that are deep and meaningful. So, let go of the need to be perfect and embrace the power of imperfection. It's where the magic happens. Choosing courage over comfort is one of the most profound and transformative decisions we can make in our lives. It's a choice that challenges us to step into the unknown, to face our fears, and to venture beyond the safe and familiar. The irony is that while we often believe that comfort is where we will find peace, happiness, and security, it's in the moments of discomfort, the times when we push ourselves out of our cozy corners, that we grow the most. This is where real change begins, and this is where our greatest potential is realized. But why is it so difficult to choose courage over comfort, and how can we begin to make that choice? For many of us, comfort is synonymous with safety and security. We seek comfort in our routines, our familiar environments, and our predictable outcomes. It feels safe to stay in situations where we know what to expect, where we can avoid risk, and where we don't have to face the vulnerability that comes with uncertainty. Comfort is where we hide from the things that scare us, whether it's failure, rejection, or the fear of being judged. We believe that if we stay in our comfort zone, we'll be able to protect ourselves from emotional pain, from mistakes, and from anything that might disrupt the illusion of control we've worked so hard to maintain. But here's the catch: while comfort can provide temporary relief, it also stifles growth. It's in the discomfort, the moments when we feel stretched beyond our limits, when we are faced with uncertainty and challenge, that we evolve. Comfort keeps us stagnant. It tells us to play it safe, to hold back, to stay within the lines. It keeps us from taking risks, from embracing new opportunities, and from becoming the people we are capable of becoming. Courage, on the other hand, is what allows us to break free from the shackles of comfort and step into a space of possibility. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the willingness to act in spite of it. It's the decision to push through discomfort because we know that it's on the other side of that discomfort where we find the growth we are seeking. One of the most powerful aspects of choosing courage over comfort is the realization that we don't have to have everything figured out. We don't need to know exactly what the outcome will be or have a perfect plan in place. In fact, the need for certainty often holds us back more than anything else. We wait until we feel ready, until we feel confident, until we have all the information, but in doing so, we prevent ourselves from taking action. Courage isn't about waiting for the perfect moment, it's about showing up and stepping into the unknown, even when we're uncertain. It's about trusting ourselves enough to take the first step, knowing that we can course correct along the way. Courage is the willingness to face discomfort and uncertainty, not knowing exactly how things will turn out, but trusting that we will learn, grow, and adapt as we move forward. When we choose courage over comfort, we open ourselves up to new experiences, new relationships, and new opportunities. Every time we make the decision to act in spite of our fears, we expand our comfort zone. We teach ourselves that discomfort is not something to avoid, but something to embrace. The more we choose courage, the easier it becomes to take risks, to pursue new goals, and to step into situations that would have previously felt too intimidating or overwhelming. Courage doesn't necessarily make the discomfort go away, but it allows us to move through it with confidence, knowing that the discomfort is temporary and that the rewards on the other side are worth it. In the process of choosing courage, we also learn to embrace failure. For many of us, failure is one of the biggest barriers to stepping out of our comfort zone. We fear failure because we associate it with inadequacy, shame, or rejection. But failure is not something to be feared, it's a natural part of the process of growth. Every time we fail, we learn something valuable. We learn what works and what doesn't, what we need to improve, and how we can approach things differently the next time. The fear of failure often keeps us in our comfort zone, but when we choose courage, we realize that failure is not the opposite of success, it's a vital part of the journey. Courage is the willingness to fail, to make mistakes, and to keep going. It's the decision to rise each time we fall, to learn from our missteps, and to keep moving forward with a greater understanding of ourselves and our capabilities. Another aspect of choosing courage over comfort is the way it impacts our relationships. It takes courage to be vulnerable, to show up as our true selves, and to have difficult conversations. It's easy to stay in the comfort of surface-level interactions, to keep things polite and safe, but this does not lead to deep, meaningful connections. True intimacy, whether in friendships, family relationships, or romantic partnerships, requires vulnerability and the willingness to be open, honest, and imperfect. When we choose courage, we allow ourselves to be seen for who we really are, flaws, fears, and all. We stop hiding behind masks, stop pretending to be someone we're not, and start showing up authentically. It's in this space of vulnerability that true connection happens. Choosing courage over comfort in our relationships means choosing authenticity, choosing honesty, and choosing the messy, beautiful work of building real, deep connections with others. Choosing courage also means embracing the discomfort that comes with growth. Growth is not linear, and it's rarely comfortable. It's filled with setbacks, challenges, and moments of doubt. But growth is essential to our well-being and our fulfillment. We are wired to evolve, to learn, and to push ourselves beyond the limits of who we think we are. Without growth, we stagnate. And stagnation is far more uncomfortable than the discomfort of growth itself. Courage is the willingness to lean into this discomfort, to allow ourselves to be stretched and challenged, knowing that each challenge we face helps us become stronger, more resilient, and more capable. The discomfort of growth is not something to shy away from, it's something to embrace because it's what allows us to become the fullest versions of ourselves. Choosing courage over comfort is not easy. It requires us to face our fears, to step into the unknown, and to take risks. But it's in this space of discomfort that we discover who we truly are, what we are capable of, and what we are made of. The courage to act, to take risks, and to be vulnerable is what leads to the most profound and rewarding experiences of our lives. So, the next time you're faced with a choice between comfort and courage, remember that courage is where the magic happens. It's where the growth, the opportunity, and the transformation lie. Choose courage, and you will discover a life far richer, more fulfilling, and more meaningful than you ever thought possible. Failure is a word that most of us are conditioned to fear. From a young age, we are taught to avoid failure at all costs, to strive for success, and to measure our worth by our accomplishments. The message is clear: failure is something to be avoided, something to be ashamed of, something that marks us as inadequate or incapable. But what if the truth is far different? What if failure is not the opposite of success but a vital part of the journey to achieving it? What if, instead of fearing failure, we learn to embrace it as an essential component of growth, learning, and ultimate success? The fear of failure is deeply ingrained in our culture. It's often tied to our sense of self-worth, our sense of competence, and even our identity. We live in a society that places a premium on success, achievement, and perfection. Whether it's in our careers, our personal lives, or our education, there's an unspoken expectation that we must succeed, and that success must come easily and without setbacks. In such an environment, failure becomes a source of shame, a marker of our limitations, and something to be avoided at all costs. But this mindset doesn't serve us. In fact, it can hold us back from reaching our true potential. The reality is that failure is not something that defines us, it's something that shapes us. Every successful person, in every field, has experienced failure. In fact, most successful people have failed numerous times before reaching their goals. Failure is not a sign that we are not good enough, it's a sign that we are pushing ourselves, taking risks, and stepping outside of our comfort zones. It's a natural part of the process of growth. Failure teaches us valuable lessons about who we are, what we are capable of, and how we can improve. It forces us to re-examine our strategies, to adjust our approach, and to keep going despite the setbacks. When we embrace failure as part of the success equation, we begin to see it for what it truly is, a stepping stone, not a roadblock. Each failure is an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to improve. It's through our failures that we gain insight into our strengths and weaknesses, our limitations and potential. Failure challenges us to become more resourceful, more resilient, and more creative. It teaches us to adapt, to innovate, and to persevere when things don't go according to plan. In this way, failure is not something to fear, it's something to embrace as a vital part of the journey towards success. Failure also helps us to develop a mindset of resilience. Resilience is the ability to bounce back after facing adversity, to continue moving forward despite challenges and setbacks. Resilience is something that can only be developed through failure. If we never fail, we never learn how to pick ourselves up after a fall. We never learn how to keep going when the road gets tough. Failure builds resilience because it forces us to confront our fears, to manage disappointment, and to find the strength to try again. Each time we fail and get back up, we become stronger, more determined, and more capable of handling whatever challenges come our way. Moreover, embracing failure helps us to let go of the need for perfection. Perfectionism is often the enemy of progress. We spend so much time trying to get everything just right, worrying about making mistakes, that we end up paralyzed by fear. We become so focused on avoiding failure that we don't take action, don't take risks, and don't pursue our goals with the full force of our potential. Embracing failure allows us to let go of perfectionism and accept that mistakes are a natural part of the learning process. It helps us to focus on progress rather than perfection, and to value the lessons we learn along the way more than the flawless outcomes we sometimes chase. In fact, many of the world's greatest inventions, innovations, and ideas came about as a result of failure. Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulb, famously failed thousands of times before finding the right filament for his invention. Each failure taught him something new, brought him closer to the solution, and ultimately led to one of the most important inventions in history. J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, faced countless rejections before finally finding a publisher for her books. She has spoken openly about how failure was a crucial part of her journey to success. Every failure was a lesson, every setback an opportunity to learn, and every rejection a step closer to achieving her dream. The key to embracing failure as part of success is to change the way we view it. Instead of seeing failure as something that diminishes us, we need to see it as something that empowers us. Failure is not an end point, it's a beginning. It's the start of a process of self-discovery, growth, and improvement. When we fail, we are given the chance to reassess, to adjust our approach, and to refine our methods. Failure gives us the opportunity to develop a deeper understanding of our goals, our values, and our vision. It helps us to clarify what we truly want and what we are willing to work for. And most importantly, it teaches us that success is not a straight line, it's a journey filled with twists, turns, setbacks, and detours. This mindset shift is not easy, but it is transformative. It requires us to be willing to let go of the fear of failure and embrace it as a necessary part of the path to success. It means being willing to take risks, to step into the unknown, and to make mistakes along the way. It means understanding that failure is not a reflection of our worth, but a reflection of our willingness to try. When we stop fearing failure, we open ourselves up to a world of possibility. We stop limiting ourselves and start exploring new opportunities, new ideas, and new ways of achieving our goals. Failure becomes a tool for growth, a teacher, and a companion on the journey to success. In the end, success is not defined by how many times we avoid failure, but by how many times we rise after we fall. It's about the courage to keep going, the resilience to bounce back, and the willingness to learn from each failure along the way. Embracing failure as part of success allows us to move through life with a greater sense of freedom, creativity, and confidence. It helps us to see challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities to grow. Failure is not something to fear, it's a vital part of the process of success. The more we embrace it, the closer we get to realizing our full potential. Thank you all for supporting my channel. I really appreciate all of you who are watching and enjoying the content. Your support means a lot to me, and I'm grateful for each and every one of you. Don't forget to like, share, and stay tuned for more awesome content. Thanks again, and see you in the next video.